from. So thank you for joining our workshop today. Reframing assessment with UDL in mind, enhancing inclusive learning at the program level. I'm Diana Jernigan-Breedy, and I'm joined by hold on one second. I'm joined by my amazing colleague, Krista Emma. We're educational effectiveness specialists in the Office of OEE. So before we get into our workshop objectives, I just want you to go around very quickly and give us your name and your department. So I'm going to start on my screen with Lindsay.
Hello, my name is Lindsay Zarnecki, and I am in the Department of Neurobiology and Behavior.
Thank you.
Thank
Cornelia?
you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Hi, my name's Cornelia, but I do go by Ken, and I'm out of the Center for Inclusive Education.
Debbie Zelzer.
Hi, everyone. I'm Debbie Zelzer. I'm chair of the Health Science Department, program director of the Health Science major, and chair of the Assessment Council.
Thank you. Welcome. Miles?
Hi, everyone. My name is Miles Marrero. I'm an RHD with Campus Residences for the Southampton campus.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. So we're going to start with our workshop objectives. We're going to explore how Universal Design for Learning, or UDL, principles apply to program level assessment. We're going to discuss strategies for designing inclusive assessments when it comes to program learning outcomes. And then we're going to engage with some relevant literature and resources on UDL and program level assessment. So I just want to give a little brief intro, I guess, to program assessment and how it differs from course assessment. So our office is mainly focused on program assessment. We measure the culmination of learning. So on a program learning objectives, it would be by the end of this program, students are able to do ... We align course objectives with program objectives, and then we support everything with data collection. Course assessment is more through the Center of Excellence Teaching Learning. So they measure the attainment of learning, align course activities with course objectives, and then they revise courses using data. So UDL, or Universal Design for Learning, is a framework to guide the design of learning environments that are accessible, inclusive, equitable, and they challenge every learner. So I like to always have a little tidbit. And for this one, sometimes when people see words like accessible and inclusive and equitable, they think of UDL as being a new buzzword. But this framework has been around for about 30 years. It started in the field of architecture as ADA and accessible laws were coming into play in the early 90s, and buildings were being revamped so that they were more accessible. Some of the theories and research behind it trickled down into education. So this is about 30 years that we've had this framework in practice. There are 3 principles that are the body of UDL: engagement, which is how you are having students engage with the content that you are teaching; representation, which is the type and content and how you are presenting information in your class to your students. And then the actions and expressions are how are students able to show you that they have mastered the content that you have been teaching. I'm going to turn it over to my colleague.
Thanks, Diana. So the UDL guidelines website, which is linked at the bottom of the slide, is a great resource. And one thing that stood out to us as we were designing this workshop is that the main goal of UDL is to fortify learner agency in the learning process. So Diana talked a little bit about those multiple means of engagement, representation, action, and expression. And Diana, if you just click the clicker one more time, there's a key quote that popped out to us that I wanted to highlight. Click that for me.
I'm trying. It's not working.
Oh,
there we go. There you go.
Great. So it says there, UDL aims to change the design of the environment rather than to situate the problem as a perceived deficit for the learner. So really getting away from that deficit mindset and saying, how can I better make my course and assessment or program assessment design more inclusive for multiple learning styles?
All right, thank you. All right, so as we explore UDL, there's some principles that help us guide our thinking when it comes to program level assessment. So first, we always want to ensure alignment with our program learning objectives, those PLOs. So UDL principles help ensure that assessments are designed to measure PLOs in a way that are accessible to all students. So when you are designing your PLO, there really should be only one or two action words. So either they're identifying, they're applying, they're creating. I find that when you put more than one, sometimes you might see 3 or 4 in a PLO. It's almost like you threw in the entire kitchen sink, right? You're not able to capture what your students have actually mastered. So what if they're able to identify, but they're not able to apply or create? So technically they have not mastered that PLO. So we try to keep it as simple as possible, 1 or 2, and that way you're able to really capture any mastery from the student. Provide multiple means of demonstration. At the program level, you want to come together as a team to create and think of diverse methods for students to demonstrate their mastery of key competencies. So it could be portfolios, presentations, research projects, podcasts, simulations. The types of assessment methods are endless. It's just that you're coming together as a team and as a program to decide which ones best capture the content that you have taught to them. Increase student engagement across the program. Use UDL to incorporate varied assessments throughout the program, keeping students engaged and motivated as they progress through different stages of their degree. So you want to make sure that the content that you're teaching is engaging, that students are involved, that they're excited to learn about the material, and especially in this world of AI, that you're constantly giving little tweaks so that you're kind of staying a little bit ahead of the AI wheel. Support lifelong learning skills by applying UDL to program assessments. Students develop critical skills such as adaptability, problem solving, and communication. And we want to prepare them for success beyond graduation. So when you're teaching, your whole mindset is that they're learning and they're having a foundation and building on that foundation so that when they hit the real world, they're ready. And then we foster equity in program completion. So UDL assessments reduce barriers, ensuring that all students, regardless of their ability or background, so regardless of whether they're a transfer student coming in and they're not where you expect them to be, or they have some type of other ability that impairs them, that they have an equitable opportunity to achieve program outcomes. Not sure about this computer. Sorry. So there's 3 strategies for UDL assessment. These are just practical strategies that you could think about from a program level. One is having flexible assessment methods. We talked about that earlier. You want to make sure that your content is applicable to those who are auditory learners, who are visual learners, who might be more tactile or hands-on, who might be more kinesthetic. They need some movement to have the information that you're teaching retained. You want to always have scaffolded support. So as a program, you have resources available to your students. So it's study guides, it's practice tests, it's unlimited quizzes, because you're not trying to be punitive. You're really trying to make sure that students are understanding the content. And then it can just really be like clear and constant and consistent feedback. So it's timely. You're not taking a long time to give students back feedback on what they're doing, and that they're able to really see how they're progressing in this class and how it affects another class. So they have a clear path on what they're doing throughout the program.
And I wanted to just piggyback off that, Diana, for a second, because I know this came up yesterday when we did this workshop for a different group, but clear and consistent feedback is so important in assessment in general. And I know a lot of our instructors do this at the course level, but it's harder to do it at a program level. So just trying to think through how you can, as either a program or a co-curricular program, provide that more holistic feedback that, you know, student A is progressing along the program learning objectives at this rate, or has achieved this many of the program objectives at the appropriate level. Sometimes it's harder for students to see that bigger picture when they're sort of bogged down in the nitty-gritty of the day-to-day in their coursework. So zooming out a little bit as a program director or as an advisor, whatever your role, can be really helpful.
And what would that look like? I'm just curious.
Yeah, so the example that I had given yesterday when I used to work with a graduate program here on campus was it was an accredited program that had a competency model. And that's not always the case. Some programs use competencies, others use learning objectives, or a combination of the two. But we had sort of a tracking sheet for each student. And it was a smaller program, so this was easier to do as opposed to maybe one of the majors that have hundreds of students. But we had a sheet that said, you know, so-and-so is, you know, achieved a beginner level rating on their professionalism and ethics competency in this course. And, you know, this is going to come back around in your second year in this other course. Here's how we think you can get from beginner to intermediate, or here's how you can get from intermediate to advanced. And that was our system that's totally can be tailored according to your objectives, your levels of mastery, but just thinking through ways to give students more feedback at that program level.
Thank you. So we have some practical strategies for UDL assessment. You're applying best practices to program assessment plans. So you ensure that PLOs are clear, measurable, and targets the skill needed to assess mastery. So the most important thing in that entire sentence is to target the skill. And that skill, you know, even in writing, you know, if the skill was really to persuade, then it's less about the writing and more on the persuasion. And they can persuade in different ways. Maybe it could be an oral argument. Maybe it is some type of podcast, like I mentioned before. Maybe it's something where they just verbally tell you what's going on, right? So if the whole idea is to persuade, focus on that particular skill. So here's another example. A computer science program outcome might include demonstrating coding proficiency. Now, there might be traditional projects, but different ways you can see if the content was mastered would be through an oral code explanation or simulation. So there are different ways, if you're flexible in the program, to see if students have mastered the skills that you have taught. This is a big one that we see on the program level would be to have capstone assessments. So you incorporate multiple ways to assess final program objectives, and usually it's a capstone that's given. So an example here would be for a business major, their capstone might allow students to submit a business plan, a startup, or create a financial model, right? So it allows a student to be creative, but also shows you how they can apply this, one, in real time and real world experiences, but also two, again, have they mastered what I have taught them? And can they apply it to another situation? So we're just asking you to be a little bit more flexible in how you assess. And then create program level feedback mechanisms that Krista already mentioned in the previous slide, right? Create a feedback system that helps students track their progress towards mastering those program learning objectives. So use formative program reviews or portfolio assessments where students self-reflect. They self-reflect on their learning, what they might need to improve on, what they've been really good at. And so this gives you an idea of where you can help them best.
And I really like that self-reflection approach as well, because it engages the student in their own learning. Again, it gives them that agency that is so critical to UDL and maybe helps increase their metacognitive skills, their motivation to achieve, you know, better and better in each course as they progress through the program. So backwards design is another concept that comes along with UDL sometimes, and it involves starting with the end in mind, as we like to say. So compare this to your traditional approach to teaching, learning, and assessing, where maybe you start with, okay, here's the content I want to teach about today, and then let me think through what kind of lesson plan would support teaching that content. And then at the end stage, I'm going to design an assessment that maybe captures that content. Backward design flips that around to prioritize achieving those learning outcomes rather than achieving, you know, the content itself. So you're going to start with that end in mind by identifying the desired result. So at the program level, that would be your program learning objective, right? Students should be able to X. Then you're going to determine, how will I know if students have achieved that? What is the acceptable evidence from my standpoint as an instructor, advisor, or whatever your role? And that's going to be your assessment method. And then from there, you're going to work backward and say, okay, if I want students to be able to do this at the end, and I want them to produce this kind of evidence to show me that they can do it, how do I have to prepare them to achieve that? What kind of teaching and learning experiences or activities do I want to design that will support that?
So this is almost the exact same thing, but this is in a different format. This is a visual format for those who are, once again, a different type of learner. So once again, you're just starting with your learning outcomes, what learners should know, do, and be at by the end. You determine your evidence. How do you know that learners have achieved the objectives? And then you create your learning plan, which is a sequence of lessons, resources, and teaching strategies. And you're constantly doing that over and over again to strengthen your program and strengthen your students. So we integrate UDL with backward design. And in this approach, you're focusing on the end goal, but you're also ensuring diverse pathways to achieving those goals. So I think probably the most important thing when you're thinking about this is to connect to your curriculum map, because you'll find that different program learning objectives are met in different courses throughout a student's time in your program. However, there's probably one or two that best align with the course best aligns with the program learning objective that you're trying to assess. So keep that in mind and constantly go through that. Identify desired results or your benchmarks. What performance benchmark allows for fairness, but also offers information on how well students have captured the content. We will never tell you what benchmark you should have. You are going to decide, is it 85%? Is it 90%? Could it be all 100%? You want all of your students to meet this benchmark? It could be 60% depending on the content. That is up to you, but we do want you to keep in mind, are you being fair to all of your students, at least the majority of your students? Are you being fair? And then the information that you're capturing, is it helpful to you? Is it giving you enough information as to how well the students are doing? Determine acceptable types of evidence. What assessment methods provide the fullest picture of student achievement and give students agency, which gives them some time to be creative, gets them to appreciate their learning styles, but also, once again, gives you the information that you need that the student is actually doing well, is understanding, and is able to capture the content. And then you plan learning experiences and instruction. What content and assessment will support student motivation? So talk to your students, right? Talk to, you're doing surveys, program level wise, listen to the feedback. A lot of times we make decisions, but we don't have the student voice in those decisions. So, if students are telling you, this particular assignment is not that great, it wasn't that helpful, I didn't learn anything from it, or this class needs a prerequisite, keep those things in mind when you're creating coursework and making changes to the program.
Okay, so just a few practical examples I wanted to give you to kind of make this a little bit more tangible. So let's say you're teaching a humanities course, for instance, and you typically have a writing assignment, and that assessment method is just your standard essay or term paper. How can you make this a little bit more inclusive with a UDL approach? Consider if you would accept alternate forms of evidence, like not just the essay, but maybe it's a creative blog post on the topic. Maybe you can have them do an oral presentation by video essay. Maybe they can record a podcast, being a little bit more flexible in the types of evidence you would accept that get at the same demonstration of that skill. Similar one is an interactive project. So maybe it could be humanities, could be business, really could be any discipline where you have a group project or group presentation. So consider if you could design that group project so that there are different types of roles that students could self-select for. So maybe in a business course, students would present from different perspectives, maybe adopting the CFO, the CEO, the chief marketing officer, the human resource officer, considering the issue from different perspectives that maybe align with their interest. Or you could parse out the division of labor to say, identify a group member who's responsible for slides design. Someone's responsible for the research component. Someone's responsible for actually delivering the presentation. So that students, again, can select the kind of demonstration of skill that is most comfortable for them.
I'm going to talk more about from a STEM perspective. So we'll use physics. And traditionally, it's a written lab report that's used to do assessments. So if we think about UDL and its approach, maybe we'll offer other types of assessments, such as a written document or a video explanation, or a digital simulation. If we're thinking about a problem-solving task, usually that's solved on paper, graphing or some type of written work. We may also consider oral presentations, visual representation, either with diagrams or digital tools. I've seen some CGI work with like Blender or an Adobe. So there's some very creative ways that students can tell you that they are problem solving their task in the STEM department. All right, so we have some further reading here, and I like these four because it gives you to have a student voice, where like in the first one is perspectives from students with disabilities in higher education. So they're literally telling you this is what works, this is what hasn't worked. So you're getting firsthand explanations from them. We have universal instruction design for online courses, because that's a little bit different than doing it in person. We have empirically based articles in the third one. So there is definitely research behind all of this. And then the last one is, once again, student perceptions of faculty implementations of UDL. So once again, you're getting student input on what works and what doesn't. So now that we've been talking forever, I would love to know, how can you apply UDL principles in your current program? And if you have, what's worked? Have there been some hiccups? What have been some of the challenges? And then, if you can talk about what are some ways that you have worked through those challenges, I greatly appreciate it. So who would like to go first? Oh, we don't all have to be shy. We're family here.
So I guess I'll go first. You've given me a lot to think about, because what I try to do is give different types of assignments, like a presentation, something they have to write, a test, as opposed to within one assignment, giving them multiple ways of doing it. I hadn't really thought about that yet. But I do try to spread out testing, presentations, participation, multiple ways that students can be assessed throughout a course.
I was just thinking about that. That might make it more engaging for you as well, because you have a very large class, and you having to read 200 papers is a lot. But if it was broken up where maybe it was only 50 papers you had to read, and there were some videos, it makes it engaging for you as well as a student. So thank you.
Thank you for that.
Anyone else?
I just wanted to commend Debbie, though, and I'm sure others are doing this on that variety, even if it's not within the same assessment method. I think it is so important to have those multiple means of showing, mastery of a skill over the course of the semester. So maybe you experiment with some options within one particular assignment, but having that formative assessment variation is so helpful as well. And Lindsay, I saw you unmuted. Feel free.
Yeah. So I think it's a really great idea to formalize the kind of metacognition of it all. So in my role as a postdoc, I would try to take graduate students aside and say, we don't often take the time to look back and see how far we've come and so many skills that you've developed. And doing that on a programmatic level, I think is very important, especially so in my program. I'm the coordinator for the master's program, and students are developing so many skills that can be applied to so many ends. And I think putting that at a program level is a novel idea for me. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, that opportunity for self-assessment and student engagement and reflecting is really valuable. And in my own, experience as a student, I've found that it really informs how you move forward. So I
Absolutely.
Would anyone else like to say anything?
Yeah, so I think I'm considering a lot of the ways that this could apply to certain initiatives in campus residences, like RA training, for example, which I think certainly shifts a discussion about assessment and learning goals because it's for the purposes of completing a student employment position. But I also think that that also increases the need to have these discussions, especially to ensure that there's equity in creating positive learning environments for our RAs. So I think I have a lot of really good ideas now to take back to the committees that I work with, especially with regards to designing those training opportunities that we provide for our RAs.
Thank you. So I know I talked a lot about OEE, but we do partner with Center for Excellence in Learning and Teaching. And so I never just want to send you to a department. I want to give you a person to actually talk to. So this is Dr. Amy Cohen. She's the Assistant Director of Faculty Development, Testing, Assessment, and Evaluation. But she is an amazing source when it comes to how to do all of this in practical ways in your classrooms. So we will share this with you, but right now, definitely feel free to reach out to CELT. They are there, they want to help. There's a whole host of instructional designers who are willing and able to make this work.
And then just a quick note, in case you haven't already seen some of our announcements or flyers around campus, please feel free to join us for the rest of our assessment workshop series this fall. We also have an assessment symposium coming up on October 30th. So if you scan the QR code or visit our website, you can register for those. Whether or not your role is directly involved in assessment, just being knowledgeable about these topics for your own professional development as, faculty or administrator in higher ed, and having that commitment to continuous improvement is really valuable. So thank you for joining us today.
All right, so thank you so very much. I know this was short and sweet. If you ever want to have one-on-one time, please feel free to email us. We will set up a consultation with you and walk you through or help you with any way assessment form, anything assessment, we will help you with. So please feel free to always come out and we will definitely help out wherever we can. So thank you so much for